You ever feel something break without a sound? That's what it felt like, standing in our hallway, watching her clutch my hoodie like it meant more to her than I did. It was one of those late September nights, when the air turned sharper and quieter. She had just come home from studying at her friend Claire's, 2 glasses of red into a carefully worded explanation about how hard it was to sleep lately. Her eyes were tired, but not in the way someone's eyes look when they're drained from work or stress. No, they darted, nervous, cagey. "Do you mind if I borrow this tonight?" she asked, holding up my old college hoodie. Navy blue, worn cuffs, faded print from a school neither of us had gone to, but I'd bought it during a road trip we took the summer before we got engaged. It smelled like bonfires and mountain air. Her favorite. Mine too. "To sleep better," she added, like that explained everything. I stared at her for a moment too long. Something didn't sit right, but I shrugged. "Sure," I said. "Keep the hoodie. You'll need it." I didn't mean it the way she thought I did, and she didn't hear it the way I meant it. Maybe that was our whole problem in a single sentence. She smiled, too easily, and turned away before I could say anything else. And that night, she wore it to bed, nestled into my side like nothing had changed. Like we were still us. But we weren't. Not really. I started noticing the little things around then. Not the big, dramatic red flags you read about in stories or watch unfold in movies. No lipstick on collars. No long strands of hair in the passenger seat. No suspicious credit card charges or perfume that didn't belong. Just silence. The kind that filled a room where there used to be laughter. The kind that settled between sentences. I'd ask how her day was, and she'd answer with a nod and a fine. I'd tell a joke, and she'd smile politely. A ghost of a laugh, like the echo of something long dead. One night I asked if everything was okay. She blinked, too quickly, and said, "Of course. Just tired. Work's been a lot lately." Work. It was always work. Her job at the architectural firm had become her go-to shield. Long hours. Sudden deadlines. Random out-of-town meetings that were definitely not optional. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. I remembered who she used to be. Spontaneous. Warm. The girl who once dragged me to the beach at midnight just to hear the waves in the dark. I kept waiting for that version of her to come back. Instead, she grew more distant. And the hoodie? It vanished a few days after that night. At first, I thought she'd left it at Claire's. Then maybe in the laundry. But when I asked, she said, "Oh, I must have left it in my car," without even looking up from her phone. But her car had been in the shop that week. She'd been getting rides from someone at work. I remembered her saying his name offhandedly once. Kyle. Or maybe Kevin. I can't lie. I stopped listening after the second or third mention. Because at the time, it didn't matter. He was just giving her a ride. I told myself that again and again. Because the alternative felt too heavy to hold. 2 weeks later, on a rainy Friday afternoon, I left work early. My car had been in the shop too, and I figured I'd surprise her, offer to swing by and pick her up. Maybe grab coffee. Maybe even talk. I pulled into the lot behind her office. The rain had stopped, but the pavement still shimmered. I parked, waited, watched employees trickle out, umbrellas and briefcases in hand. Then I saw her. She was walking fast, her shoulders hunched against the wind. And beside her, laughing too loud, standing too close, was Kyle. Or Kevin. I still don't remember his name. They didn't see me. Not at first. She opened the passenger door to his black SUV and leaned in to grab something. That's when I saw it. My hoodie, crumpled in the back seat like it had been there for days. The sleeves twisted, the collar stained faintly with what looked like coffee or maybe something worse. My chest tightened. She laughed at something he said, then slid into the passenger seat like she belonged there. I didn't follow, didn't honk or call her name. I just sat there, watching the taillights blur into the wet road, my hoodie still warming the space where I used to be. Later that night, she came home like nothing had happened. Set down her bag, kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted Thai or sushi. I said, "Keep the hoodie." She blinked. "What? You'll need it," I said. Then I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and tried to swallow the feeling that everything I thought I knew had just fallen apart without making a sound. I didn't sleep much that night, or the next few after. It's a strange thing, lying beside someone who's already gone. Her breathing was steady, peaceful even, like she hadn't just come from a car ride with another man, like my hoodie hadn't been tossed in his back seat, like some forgotten souvenir of a lie. And me? I stared at the ceiling like it held answers. Like if I stared long enough, I'd finally understand. I didn't bring it up. Not yet. Because part of me needed to see more. Not for evidence. My heart had already passed judgment. But I needed to watch the story unfold. Needed the illusion to fall apart on its own. It's hard to explain. I wasn't looking for drama. I wasn't even angry. What I felt was closer to grief. Like the person I loved had died, but her body kept showing up to dinner. She texted him often, I noticed. She thought she was being careful, setting her phone face down when she showered, keeping her ringer low. But I heard the buzzes. The patterns. I saw her light up in ways she hadn't with me in months. One morning, while she was in the bathroom, her phone lit up across the kitchen island. I didn't touch it. Didn't need to. His name popped up with a message preview. Still thinking about last night. Still smiling. My stomach dropped. She came out moments later, towel on her head, humming some song I didn't recognize. She kissed me on the cheek, said she'd be late again tonight. Client dinner. I nodded, handed her a travel mug of coffee. Don't forget your jacket, I said. She smiled. You're the best. I watched her walk out the door, still wearing the shoes I bought her for our 3rd anniversary. And I started to pack, not clothes. Not yet. Memories. I found our wedding album tucked beneath a pile of untouched cookbooks. The cover had started to warp a little from heat, or time, or maybe just neglect. I opened it. Page after page of smiles, toasts, cake on our noses, sand between our toes. And I stared at one photo in particular. Us dancing barefoot on the beach at midnight, my hoodie wrapped around her shoulders, her eyes locked on mine like she couldn't believe I was real. I used to think that photo captured the happiest moment of my life. Now I wasn't sure if it was the happiest moment or just the clearest lie. I started writing in a notebook I hadn't touched in years. Not a journal, exactly. More like a map. What I knew. What I didn't. Where she went. Who she mentioned. When her eyes flickered. When her voice changed. It felt paranoid. Maybe even pathetic, but I needed a pattern to anchor myself. Something to hold on to. Because the love was still there. That was the worst part. I still wanted to believe her, to believe us. I still made her coffee. Still laughed when she made bad puns. Still caught myself reaching for her hand while we watched reruns on the couch. But it wasn't real anymore. I think deep down, she knew I knew. One night, 2 weeks after the hoodie, she asked if I wanted to go on a weekend trip. Just the two of us. Clear our heads, she said. Reconnect. I wanted to say yes. God, I did. But I also wanted the truth. So instead, I said, let me check with work. And then I checked with myself. That night, while she was asleep, I got in my car. Drove around aimlessly. Ended up outside his apartment complex. I'd only seen it once before, when I followed them after work. I parked across the street. Lights were on in his second-floor window. Shadows moved behind curtains. I don't know what I expected to see. But then I saw it. My hoodie, draped over a chair on his balcony. Just hanging there. Mocking me. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just sat there in my car, hands gripping the wheel, a hollow ringing in my ears. That hoodie had meant something to me. Something small, but real. A piece of me. And now it was nothing more than her comfort. Or worse, his. I drove home in silence. My heart louder than the engine. She was still asleep when I got back. I crawled into bed, stared at the ceiling again. This time I whispered. I know. She didn't stir. Maybe she heard. Maybe she didn't. But for the first time in weeks, I slept. Because sometimes the truth doesn't break you. It frees you. The morning after I saw the hoodie on his balcony, everything looked the same, but I felt different. She made pancakes, humming something off-key. I sat at the table and watched her pour syrup with the casual grace of someone who didn't know the storm had already passed. That the house was gone, only the walls remained. I didn't ask her anything that day. Didn't mention Kyle. Or the hoodie. Or the fact that I'd been sitting outside his apartment at 1:14 a.m., watching her laugh through his kitchen window. No, I just watched her. Closely. Because sometimes you don't need to ask. Sometimes the truth is hanging in the air between you. Thick and heavy like smoke. That evening, she came home later than usual. Her eyes were puffy. She didn't say where she'd been. I didn't ask. We sat in silence for dinner. The clink of silverware louder than any words we could have shared. And then, out of nowhere, she dropped her fork. Hands trembling. I need to tell you something, she whispered. Still, I said nothing. Just leaned back in my chair and let her speak. She started crying before the words even came. Soft at first, then harder, like the dam had cracked and the flood was spilling out. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said. I didn't plan it. I didn't even like him that way, at first. It was just the tension. That's all it was. And then one night. I don't know. It just happened. I stayed quiet. I kept thinking I'd end it, she said. That I could fix this, fix us. But every time I looked at you, I couldn't face what I was doing. I kept lying. Even when you were kind. Especially when you were kind. I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't the same woman I married, but I wasn't the same man either. I stood up, walked into the living room, and pulled something from behind the bookshelf, her folded hoodie. Mine, really. The same one I found weeks ago, stuffed behind the seat of his car after he left it unlocked. I dropped it on the table between us. Her breath caught. Eyes wide. That look people get when they realize the curtain's been pulled back and the audience has seen everything. I said you could keep it. I told her, my voice low. Calm. Because I knew you'd need something to hold on to when this was over. She looked like she might faint. Or speak. Or run. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was done. We didn't fight that night. We didn't scream. She kept asking questions I wouldn't answer. When did you know? How long have you known? Why didn't you say something? I just looked at her and said, because there's nothing left to say. The next morning, I moved into a small apartment across town. Quiet. Clean. Mine. She called a few times. Left a message once. Can we talk? Please? I never responded. I didn't need closure. I'd already found it. On a rainy street, in the reflection of my hoodie draped on someone else's balcony. In the silence after her confession. In the realization that loving someone isn't the same as being loved by them. It's been 6 months. The hoodie's in a box now, somewhere in storage. I thought about throwing it out, but something about keeping it felt right. Not as a reminder of her, but of me. Who I was. Who I became. Some nights I still think about her. Not in anger. Not even in sadness. Just clarity. Love is a strange thing. It makes you give parts of yourself away without asking for anything back. And betrayal? It doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it borrows your favorite hoodie, promises to sleep better, and returns it weeks later, smelling like someone else's cologne. But here's what I've learned. You don't have to burn bridges to move on. Sometimes, you just stop crossing them and walk a different way home.